take a look at the anatomy of this ruffler foot. The reason why it's so intimidating because it is very chunky. I must tell you, it's very chunky, and it looks like it's just so involved here, but it really isn't. You know, the ruffler foot, it is designed to do ruffles every 1 stitch, every 6 stitch, and every 12 stitches, and you can actually change that up here. So if you wanted very deep ruffles or just a few gathers, all you would have to do is just simply lift it up and then switch it over, and then the numbers are here. They are printed or engraved inside of the ruffler foot. And I have other ruffler foots, and I gotta tell you that pretty much they all are pretty much manufactured the same way, except some attach a little bit easier, I must tell you that. However, they all do the same thing, they ruffle, right? Okay, so this ruffler foot, you will attach it, the arm goes over the arm where the needle goes, and then this actually goes on the shank. So if we look at it this way, because this is the way it will be going, remember we left that space here, and that's because this arm is going to attach there. So if you see the opening here, that's going to attach here, and then this arm is going to attach to that long arm where we unscrew the needle. The fabric actually goes under here and under there. Now, it depends on if you want to ruffle a piece of fabric and attach it to a flat piece of fabric, you can do that. But for the most part, let's just focus on getting this piece of a foot, that is, this ruffler foot, onto your Brother JX 2517. Okay, I just want you to first watch how I attach this, and then I'll explain what I'm doing in the second time around. Okay, so basically what I was doing was I attached this arm to this arm, and then I attached this arm to this arm. So basically you want to make sure that you got your first arm, the top arm, aligned with this arm, and then what will happen is it almost just kind of grabs it. It really is an easy thing to do. It just kind of slides right on, and then all you have to do is just tighten. Oop, did I put the camera? I think I did. Just tighten this screw right here, and that's really important that this is tightened properly. This is not a situation where you want to use your finger, because this needs to be tightened flush up against your shank arm. Okay, so that means that, you see how that's still loose? No, that needs to be flush up against your shank arm, no space, not loose. It needs to be tight. But what would my videos be if I didn't have a closer look from another angle? Okay, so what I wanted to do was show you how it looks from the side angle, even though it's going to come on this way. So basically it's pretty straightforward. Like I said, if you line up the arm with the needle arm, and you line up the side arm with the shank arm, it's pretty straightforward. So you see how easily both of them are attached. And then I switched screwdrivers because that one was just too small for a video. So anyways, I'm just tightening it up, and remember, we want it nice and flushed. We don't want it loose. And even if you have to use your finger just to get it initially up there, you want to make sure that you finalize tightening it with a screwdriver. It just does a much better job, and you don't want your ruffler foot falling off on you when you are in the middle of a project. So I also wanted to get a side view of the other arm just so you can see exactly what's happening there. And it just pretty much slides over there. It doesn't really attach to anything. It's just pretty much hanging out there and resting on that arm simultaneously with the shank arm down here, if you see how flushed it is, pretty much. I just wanted you to be clear on all angles. The front angle can look a bit intimidating because you're not really seeing what's going on, but once you take the time to look at what's really happening, you see that it really isn't much at all. It's pretty straightforward. So I hope that you are encouraged to buy ruffler foot. And now let's see what a ruffler foot can do for you. Now, what I'm going to be doing is actually part of a project that I was doing for another video. I have an apron that had a spot on it, and I didn't want to throw it away because it is an apron. I could always use aprons in my studio. So what I simply did was just, embroidered a heart on it and an applique. And because this stain is in the body part of the apron, I'm just going to make like a little ruffle skirt just to cover it a little bit. And that's just for when I do my workshops or art classes. I just have something to put on. So this is a perfect opportunity to use this ruffler foot to make some gathers so we can attach it to the apron to cover the stain. Okay, so now that your ruffler foot is attached, now it's time to reinsert the needle. I only unloosened the screw. I never tightened it back once I removed the needle. And because the ruffler foot arm is just resting on it, reinserting the needle should be very easy. So I'm going to reinsert it. And just like I said, or thought pretty much, it should reinsert easy, and it did. And I'm just going to tighten it on the right side here with the screwdriver. And there we have it. The needle is back in place. Now it's time to take a look at some of these ruffles that the ruffler foot can do. And remember, we have a 12 setting, a 6-stitch setting, and a 1-stitch setting. So let's see exactly what that means. Next, make sure your sewing machine is set to number 6, 7, 8, or 9 stitch. On the Brother JX2517, those are the only 4 stitches that your ruffler foot will work on. A ruffler foot uses a straight stitch, and on the JX2517, between 6 and 9 are your straight stitch settings. Direct your attention to the needle, and then direct your attention to where the needle will land. You see that hole there? That's because it is set on one of your straight stitch settings. If you set it, your machine that is, on any other stitch, your needle will bump into the ruffler foot. So the ruffler foot has 2 layers to it. It has a top level and it has a bottom level layer for where the fabrics is going to go. Because remember, the ruffler foot can also make a ruffle with one fabric and attach it to the flat fabric. So first, what we're going to do is get the fabric onto the machine by putting it on that lower layer. So I'm going to slide the fabric right here. And what you want to do is help it along. So the beginning part of the ruffle or your fabric is going to be here. Okay, so I just pulled it out just a tad bit, just so you can see. So you see the top part of the ruffle is resting on the fabric. And then here's where your needle and your foot is going to make that ruffle. I want you to take a look at it from a different angle, and this is from your right angle. So the ruffler foot has this arm here, and you want to make sure your fabric is all the way up against that arm, and that is it's extending out. Excuse me, it's extending out. Now we're going to place the take-up lever in the downward position, and now we're going to place the needle inside of the fabric. And remember, the ruffler foot is set on the 12 stitch setting. So that means that it's going to ruffle every 12 stitches. huh? So let's take a look at what happened. So the sewing machine made 12 stitches, then a ruffle, 12 stitches, then a ruffle, 12 stitches, then a ruffle. So let's turn the machine onto, or the ruffler foot that is, onto a 6-stitch setting and see what does that ruffle look like. So remember, to switch the settings, we're just simply going to lift this up and switch it over to number 6. Okay, so we already have the fabric onto the machine attached to the ruffler foot. The needle is in place, and the setting is on a number 6 setting. So now all we have to do is begin to make those ruffles every 6 stitches. Okay, so on this ruffle, as you can see, the gathers are much closer, and it's because the sewing machine made 6 stitches, then a ruffle, 6 stitches, then a ruffle, and so forth. Let's see what happens when we switch the setting to a 1 stitch. So I've already started stitching or ruffling every 1 stitch. So here you have your ruffle every 12 stitches, your ruffle every 6 stitches, and your ruffle every 1 stitch. It really depends on your preference, and it also depends on what you are actually sewing as well. So once again, I'm going to be making a little skirt for an apron that has a stain on it that I'm trying to cover, but it's my apron, so it's not perfect. I just didn't want to toss it in the garbage. So I switched the setting to every 6 stitches, but I wasn't really liking the way it came out with the every 12 stitches. I'm not trying to really achieve a tight ruffle. I just want to gather, but I at least want to see it. So I have it back on the machine, doing a ruffle every 1 stitch here.